I remember when I was growing up and video games, going so from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 and etc. There was always this big focus, the main one, and the main selling point was always the improvement of the graphics. And you would see that they would become more polished, more realistic. The new Call of Duty would come out, and the main focus would always be like, oh, it's more realistic than ever. The graphics, they look more like real life than ever. And in a lot of ways, it was a sort of an attempt to polish, to get as close as possible to sort of perfection. And in this case, that perfection would be if you could not tell the video game from real life. And that progressed. And obviously, if you look at, I don't know, the first Call of Duty, taking that example here, to the latest, it is clear that the graphics nowadays are better. But along the line, and this goes for video games as it goes for, I think, pretty much anything, if artistic, if you look at movies, if you look at TV shows, anything like that. And we have lost track of things to a point that I believe it has come full circle. To the point that this wanting to polish things, to perfect things so much, has completely lost its appeal. At least to me and a lot of people that I talk with and that I see online, is that, in this attempt to polish everything so much and to reach this perfection, especially from the aesthetic side of things, is we forgot what, to any of these creative pursuits and products, we forgot what actually gives them value. And it's not about the best graphics or the best CGI or the highest resolution that you're seeing on your screen. Those things help sometimes to make it better, but they're not what make these experiences enjoyable. And they're not what makes us consume this art and then further to create our own art. And I think we're becoming painfully aware of that, especially with AI. And the more, and I would say here, like, sort of polished and smooth around the edges things become, that there's always a part of us that revolts against that cannot tolerate seeing anymore these skins that look like wax, or seeing the CGI and everything, and seeing everything wanting to be so perfect and so PG and so polished around the edges. I think we've realized that there is a reason why things back then, whether that was video games on your PlayStation 2 like me, or whether that was movies or TV shows or even books that you read, there is a reason why they felt better. And it is not only nostalgia, it is not only just a remembering of the past that kind of distorts your perception of things. I think a good example, and I think with the example I gave in the beginning with Call of Duty, now that they released the original Black Ops 1 and 2 on the PlayStation again, and people are playing this, millions of players are playing and continue to play, and people are realizing, like, no, this was actually better back then. The graphics were a bit worse, but there was something here that doesn't exist anymore. There was a certain soul to these products, to these movies, to this art that has been lost. And it has been lost, well, the reason I think that one is a bit easier to see, which is first of all, the popularization of all these things, which leads to a lot of money, which leads to a lot of people that do not care about the art and do not care about the process, have no love for it, enter the process and just ask the creatives on, how do we make this more profitable? How do we make more money? And that ruins everything. But beyond that, because the individual himself or herself cannot really impact that. Those things are going to be what they're going to be. The companies get too big, whatever. But I think if one feels, as I feel and as a lot of people feel, when you are confronted with this art that really does not give you anything besides disappointment, I think you are confronted with a feeling inside that makes you want to create things. And that, in a lot of ways, gets a bit upset and revolts a bit, because you know how good things were. You know how they're not good anymore. And I think a part of you, of that anger, of that frustration, is simply the itch that has to be scratched by creating. And I'm not saying that you're going to go and do your own movie by yourself or create your own video game, or perhaps you don't have the tools or the skills, or fine. But there is something there. And there's not only the motivation for it, but there's also a step to be taken there. And I say that to you as much as I say to myself, that there are ways for this itch to be scratched, and for us not to have to continue just reliving things that were good in the past and consuming those. But besides that, I think I'm getting a bit scattered at. I think as well, before I get out of that, it just shows us that fundamentally, that it is not the most polished, quote unquote, perfect thing we are after. And I think there's a little things nowadays that show us that. And for that, for example, the Obsession movie, that even though I didn't see, so I'm, kind of talking out of my ass a little bit here, but that low budget, not that much CGI or whatever, but has a big impact on people. Or there's sometimes, indie games that come out that just truly make an impact because, it gives something different to people, something more real. And I think the best example of this, even though it's very old at this point, is Minecraft, the most sold game of all time, with the worst graphics of all time, perhaps. I remember when it came out, when it was the alpha version, and I was seeing CNNers playing it on YouTube way back in the day. And your first instinct is like, what the hell is this? It's we're after the best graphics, because it was really at that time when people were, it was all about the graphics. And then this comes out, and this looks like a game for the PlayStation 1 with blocks, and there's really no objective. I just do whatever I want. What the hell is this? But then you start playing, and you start playing, you're like, wow, there's something here, and you're digging in. That music hits you, and that's it. You're hooked, and then you remember this for the rest of your life, because there's something else there. There's soul to it. And I think here, going a step beyond, having this soul to this artistic content, it is the roughness around the edges. It is the imperfection. It is all of these things that then, in my opinion, elevate it even more. Because what is roughness around the edges more than just the humanity in it? What is it more than just the touch of the artist in these things and these little imperfections, these little things that, they don't connect perfectly, but they connect and they show the humanity of him or her who created. And I think when we go to things that nowadays with so much, first of all, AI, the main culprit here, but then also, let's say, movies that just use a ton of CGI with artists that it's not their fault, but they're overworked and they're just having to spit these things out. You just look at it and everything, it just looks all too, it just lacks character, it lacks artistic vision, it lacks, in a lot of ways, it lacks the humanity in it. And I think that's why it feels so empty when we watch a lot of them. And you're looking at it, and perhaps a lot of them, they're not bad, but they're not good either. You're just, it's as if you just, I don't know, ate a meal without seasoning. You're like, yeah, I guess I'm full, but I'm not satisfied. There's something else, something missing here. And I say all this because, first and foremost, because I'm tired of a lot of these things, and I'm tired of just having to go rewatch things that I already watched and I already played and I already consumed from back in the day, because, we can't say that the ideas have ran out. We can't look at things that we've done and say like, yeah, all the creativity in humanity is gone now. Because when we look at things from the past, from authors that really took a great step forward, for example, I'm reading Dune right now, and absolutely fantastic. Like, this guy created this, Frank Herbert, when there was, you really had almost nothing to go from in these concepts you're creating, and somehow, you were able to put them forth. You can't tell me that there are not people like that nowadays in writing and painting and in movie directing that cannot put these things forward. Of course they can. But we have to, well, it's hard to say what we as a whole have to do, but the one that's creating has to dare to do these things away from the polishness, let me use AI because it's more optimized. Let me optimize everything. No, it's not about that. It's not about that, because such things, they never perdure, they never endure through time, and they never really leave a mark on anyone. If you think about in your own life, what are the things that made the biggest impact in you? Whether that's video games or music or movies or TV shows or books, they were never perfect if you think about it. There's always things that could have a little more polish to them, that perhaps are a bit too, gritty, too rough around the edges. But it is that roughness that make them what they are. And I don't even know where to conclude with this, because I know I scattered a bit too much here with, what we should do and what it is. But I think above all, for those who create us, let's not be afraid of of having that humanity in our work and of not having to optimize everything and not just putting your text on Claude and tell them to review. No, you review it. You sit there and you take that leap that sometimes feels a bit uncomfortable, that you're not sure, and just put it out there. Maybe it goes with the type, but who cares? It is better that way, in my opinion, than with some AI that reviewed it and then just, uniformed it to as to anyone that puts it there, and then it becomes something that is not your own, that is really not human at that point. And to those who consume, that is everyone, because he who creates consumes too. Let's seek more of these things too. Let's not be satisfied just with scrolling through AI bullshit or the most easy to digest thing and to consume. No, let's actually dive into these things. Let's allow ourselves to be a bit uncomfortable as we consume some of these works. In the beginning, let's sit with these things. And let's recognize that what we're really after in the creation side and the consumption side is not the most perfect thing. It's not the most polished thing. It is in a lot of ways. Now it's like we went full circle and we realized that it is in a lot of ways the opposite of this perfection that we're after.